It was a cold and wintry Saturday on February 18, 1950, when a beautiful baby girl was born to Doris C. and George L.P. Moore. That baby girl, Elizabeth B.B. Moore, went on to become one of the great literary giants of the last century, known as B.B. Moore Campbell. From an early age, she loved reading and writing all through her elementary years. She began her secondary studies at the Philadelphia High School for Girls, where she became known for her stick-to-it nature and was identified as a natural-born leader. Her organizational skills were recognized by her classmates, and she was selected as chairperson of her junior prom, and the following year as a senior, chosen to be narrator of her senior class show. After high school graduation in 1967, Bibi entered the University of Pittsburgh, where she graduated summa cum laude in the field of education. She decided to become an elementary school teacher in Atlanta, Georgia in the early 1970s, as she never thought she could have a career as a writer. Despite rejection, she continued to hone her skills, taking writing courses, especially one taught by renowned author Toni Cade Bambara, that she often noted served as a catalyst for her continued pursuit of writing. Her journalistic quest eventually caught the attention of the Washington Post, the New York Times, and Ebony and Essence magazines. Later, she became a frequent commentator on radio and television shows such as National Public Radio, ABC, and CNN. After she relocated to Los Angeles, Bibi continued her writing career and published several best-selling books such as Successful Women, Angry Men, and Sweet Summer, Growing Up With and Without My Dad. Later novels included Your Blues Ain't Like Mine, Brothers and Sisters, Singing in the Comeback Choir, and What You Owe Me. When a loved one was diagnosed with a mental illness, bipolar disorder, Bibi shifted her focus of writing to that subject. She authored the best-selling children's book, Sometimes My Mommy Gets Angry, about a little girl learning to cope with her mother's mental illness. In fact, the book received the National Alliance on Mental Illnesses Outstanding Literature Award for 2003. Following that success, Bibi wrote 72-Hour Hold, about a mother seeking help for her daughter's mental illness. She became increasingly known as an advocate for those with mental illness and their families. Through her efforts, Bibi Moore Campbell sought to raise awareness of mental health issues affecting people of color and to help eliminate disparities existing in mental health services and treatment. She was passionate about eradicating the stigma associated with mental illness, especially in African American communities. She worked to educate communities of color to support recovery and mental wellness through effective treatment options, access to quality mental health services, and community outreach. As a part of her untiring advocacy, Bibi became a co-founder of the National Alliance on Mental Illness, Urban Los Angeles chapter. Bibi Moore Campbell was a daughter, wife, mother, grandmother, journalist, author, and mental health advocate. Her legacy remains an inspiration to us all.
Around 2000, there was a whispered phone call between friends. That phone call would bring together a small group of us, African American professional women, to comfort one another and, more importantly, to pray for our loved ones who were demonstrating mental health issues. B.B. Moore Campbell was one of us. Gathering as a mother's prayer group, we met in secrecy. After all, no one wanted their business in the street.
Each one of us had been seeking help for our loved ones, from therapists to mental health programs and other agencies, but also to be with clientele who looked like us.
We tried to glean what we could to help us navigate this new, different, and challenging journey of psychiatric illnesses and mental health issues. We started a sharing library of books and research articles relevant to mental illness.
Eventually, we heard of an organization comprised of people like ourselves NAMI, the National Alliance on Mental Illness. It too had begun with a few dedicated people resolved to find a better treatment for their loved ones with mental illness. One by one, each one of us in the group decided to take the educational classes known as Family to Family.
In those classes, we learned that mental illness is a biological brain disease. We shared their pain, anguish, and frustration in finding appropriate treatment and services for our loved ones. Soon, we realized that NAMI had much to offer and could be suitable in our own African American community.
We had much work to do. Eventually, we founded NAMI Inglewood in April 2003, and within a couple of years, the chapter became known as NAMI Urban Los Angeles. The NAMI organization, the National Alliance on Mental Illness, is the nation's largest grassroots volunteer organization dedicated to understanding and improving the lives of people with mental illnesses and their family.
Those mental illnesses, also known as biological brain diseases, may include, but are not limited to, major depression, bipolar disorder, schizophrenia, and post-traumatic stress disorder. NAMI is comprised primarily of family members of persons with mental illness and also those living with mental illness.
NAMI's mission is to educate, support, and advocate for persons with mental illness and their families. The chapter was founded on that mission. In the beginning, it was the only chapter in the United States dedicated to serving the mental health needs
of communities of color through education, support, and advocacy.
When the founding members, Bebe Moore Campbell, Nancy Carter, Jo Helen Graham, Judy Ann Elder, Lynn Goodlow, and Benita Council set out to establish their own chapter, they demonstrated the necessary strength and determination to carry out the NAMI mission of education, support, and advocacy. The uniqueness of their chapter was its attention to serving the mental health needs of communities of color. The group began with the flagship classes of Family to Family. As the word spread, it was apparent that there was a need in the community. There was even a waiting list for people wanting to take the classes. Many had loved ones with mental illness, some with a formal diagnosis, some not. Eventually, the chapter formed support groups wherein participants felt safe and comfortable in sharing their experiences of living with mental illness in the family. The chapter began to partner with local mental health agencies and also formed associations with notable persons in the field of psychology and psychiatry. In 2004, they were active participants in the first NAMI Walks for the Minds of America in Los Angeles County. Board members and often new members offered their services to speak at community forums and panels. As they shared with others, they reinforced the need for appropriate treatment and services for persons with mental illness and their families in diverse communities of color. But moreover, there had to be an elimination of the stigma associated with mental illness.
My name is Rowena Rucker. I'm with NAMI Urban Los Angeles. I am the education coordinator with NAMI. I'm also a family-to-family instructor. I have 5 children, and mental illness hit my eldest child and my youngest child. I find myself going to a psychiatrist for my own mental health well-being, only to be told that I might have to take medication as well. But I decided I didn't want to go that route, and they directed me to join NAMI Urban. So upon arriving at NAMI Urban, I realized that what I was really needing was education, how to learn how to help my sons. And in joining NAMI Urban, I realized that I really had a strong desire and passion for learning as much as I could. This was in the year 2004. I am still with NAMI Urban today, and this is 2023.
One of Bebe Moore Campbell's famous quotes became a hallmark of NAMI Urban LA. She said, "Once my loved one accepted the diagnosis, healing began for the entire family, but it took too long. It took years. Can't we as a nation begin to speed up that process? We need a national campaign to destigmatize mental illness, especially one targeted towards African Americans. The message must go on billboards and in radio and TV public announcements. It must be preached from pulpits and discussed in community forums. It's not shameful to have a mental illness. Get treatment. Recovery is possible. Unfortunately, in November of 2006, Bebe Moore Campbell passed away. The next year, 2007, was one of healing and perspective as the members of the chapter reflected on the status of their NAMI mission with Bebe's vision in mind. Her advocacy for those with mental illness and their families had also caught the attention of others around the country. In fact, some of Bebe's friends on the East Coast began to lobby in Congress for some kind of recognition of her efforts on a national level. Finally, in May 2008, the 110th Bipartisan Congress of the United States of America passed House Resolution number 134, designating the month of July as Bebe Moore Campbell National Minority Mental Health Awareness Month. This acknowledgement honors Bebe's legacy for her literary works and her tireless advocacy to bring awareness and attention to mental illness, especially in communities of color. That year, the County of Los Angeles presented the first of yearly proclamations to NAMI Urban LA for the month of July as Bebe Moore Campbell National Minority Mental Health Awareness Month. The chapter also held its first annual celebration at the California African American Museum with selected speakers in the field of mental health from the Los Angeles area. During the following year, the chapter continued with its education classes, support groups, advocacy campaigns, and its annual celebratory events during the month of July.
Actually, I found NAMI 9 years after my loved one was initially diagnosed. And I had Googled and researched and assembled a lot of information, but it did not equate to support or letting me know what was the prognosis of these illnesses and how it would unfold. So it was a long time coming. And it actually serves as a motivation for me because I don't think anyone should have to wait that long. When I came to NAMI Urban LA, we had a little motto that, NAMI, the community's voice on mental illness, leads you to ask the next question: who is the community? And I live in Villa Park area, South Los Angeles area, more precisely, and the community is about 32% African American and about 67% Latino or Spanish speaking. So we had nothing like most NAMIs at the time. We provided 2 family-to-family classes per year, one in the spring, one in the fall. And that was it. Both of those were in English. So if you were a Spanish speaker, particularly a monolingual Spanish speaker, you are out of luck. So that was something our board, when it was brought to their attention, got on board with changing that dynamic. So, we either have to be the community's voice on mental illness or stop saying it. So we started to reach out to the Latino community and finding different places in the mental health system and behavioral health system to come in contact with people who were bilingual that were interested in getting on board with our program. And really in about 3 years, we had achieved language parity such that all of the programs we offer in English, we also offered in Spanish. That's been a humongous change. And of course, we provided infinitely more programs and services than we were doing in those early days.
During the next several years, the chapter expanded its focus. There was a growing need for services in other underserved minority communities of color, most notably the Spanish-speaking population in Los Angeles County. NAMI Urban LA began to offer family-to-family classes and eventually support groups led by Spanish-speaking personnel.
Mi nombre es Rosa Álvarez y cómo me envolví con NAMI Urban Los Ángeles a través de la enfermedad de mis seres queridos. a través de asistiendo a una clase como estudiante y después tomé las clases para ser un maestro. Después de las clases de ser maestro, tomé el entrenamiento para ser una entrenadora de maestros en español. How do I find NAMI? Was through Los Angeles Department of Mental Health, a conference. There was a table with resource and was a NAMI flyer, and I spoke with the person that was representing NAMI. And but at the moment, I didn't know much about mental illness, and I didn't. When I was asked if I have family member with mental illness, I said no. I think it was the stigma or the not knowing. Even though I have loved ones living with mental illness and myself, but we say other names, but not mental illness.
NAMI Urban Los Angeles continued to strengthen its association with various mental health partners. The chapter received selected grants to assist in promoting their mission.
Dee Hirsch played a big part on us starting to really grow as a nonprofit, to have a lot of credence into what the type of work that we were doing. Dee Hirsch arranged for us to have a sizable grant that helped us to hire consumers and clients at the time to go into their workplace and bring in more clients to get them registered and get them into the wellness community. I can't thank them enough. That went on for several years, that particular contract. And from there on, we just continued to grow. We started having a lot more respect from the community and from the Department of Mental Health, and we were given about 3 POs. And those POs have grown now into a huge contract for us. Along with that, we had Dignity Health was instrumental in employing us to handle mental health first aid. What we would do is we would teach people, adults and consumers or clients, whoever was really interested in finding out the first signs of mental health issues in an individual, where you could be the first one to help them and move them into wellness, to get them into a hospital, to get them into counseling. And that was an excellent try for us in terms of moving forward. And presently, thank you so much for the Department of Mental Health. And right now, we have a sizable grant that's for 3 years. It's really bringing us more into the community, virtually and in person now, teaching our family signature classes. And at the very beginning, we were only doing 1 to 3 classes a year, family to family. It was a situation where we were only working out of a small office, and then now we're into a nice size office, and we're doing more outreach in the community. We're in the Leimert Park area now, and it's just been wonderful.
Membership grew through the ongoing presence in various underserved communities of color.
I believe we somewhat stumbled on NAMI. We didn't know what to look for. We didn't know what was going on. And we were just trying and exhausting our own resources until my wife discovered it at the church. But we didn't know there were a group like NAMI existed. And our understanding of mental health and mental illness was very, like most people, if you don't need it, you don't care for the most part, or you don't engage. So, we didn't know it existed, but once we fell upon it and discovered it, it was like the light being turned on. And I use that illustration, I use that analogy so often. It was like being in the dark and then having the light turned on. That's the best description I can provide for NAMI and what they offer.
The chapter continued to recognize the work of notable persons in the field of mental health in the Los Angeles area during their annual celebrations in July as Bebe Moore Campbell National Minority Mental Health Awareness Month, beginning in 2010, when they initiated annual awards to persons who had made noteworthy contributions to the field of mental health. 2013 was significant for the chapter as they celebrated their 10th anniversary. During those years, NAMI Urban LA received the constant and continuous support of local community leaders such as Councilman Bernard Parks and Supervisor of the 2nd District of Los Angeles County, Mark Ridley Thomas. Through their generous patronage, NAMI Urban Los Angeles continued their mission in minority, underserved communities of color. Additionally, NAMI Urban Los Angeles' outreach moved into the communities of Korean-speaking persons.
미국의 그립쉐어 프로그램을 진행하던 중에 자살을 시도하려는 분이 있었어요. 그분이 성경 공부를 통하여서 자살하는 것을 포기하게 됐습니다. 하나님의 나라를 발견하고 자살 시도를 멈췄던 것이죠. 저는 DMH를 통하여서 자살 예방 훈련을 받았고 그 이후에 정신질환에 대한 공부도 하게 됐고 어떻게 하면 한인들을 도울 수 있을까라고 생각하고 나미 얼반 로스앤젤레스에서 패밀리 투 패밀리를 공부를 했습니다. 영어가 익숙하지 않아서 참 어려운 공부였지만 가르치시는 선생님들의 도움으로 잘 마쳤죠. 그리고 귀한 딸 둘도 패밀리 투 패밀리 공부를 잘 마치고 팬데믹 이전까지 자원봉사하면서 많은 사람을 도왔습니다.
The foundation of NAMI Urban LA's programs and services lies within its education classes, support groups, and advocacy campaigns. All of NAMI Urban LA's programs are free to the public. Some of their more notable classes are Family to Family, De Familia a Familia, Peer to Peer, De Persona a Persona, NAMI Connection, Conexión, and NAMI Basics, Bases y Fundamentos. There are also support groups in the languages of English, Spanish, and Korean. First Thursday speaker presentations are a part of the NAMI Urban LA programs. Professionals in the field of mental health are invited to speak on topics ranging from psychiatric medication management to issues of substance abuse and addiction to the handling of conservatorship for a loved one. NAMI Urban LA's advocacy efforts have focused on improvements in mental health legislation and policy on the local, state, and national level. Furthermore, the quest continues to eliminate the stigma that is associated with mental illness. In September 2017, the View Park 54th Street Library in Los Angeles was renamed the View Park B.B. Moore Campbell Library. Since then, members of NAMI Urban Los Angeles have both given presentations on issues of mental health for the community and hosted exhibits highlighting the work of B.B. Moore Campbell. In the last several years, the annual celebrations honored persons who've made significant accomplishments in the field of mental health. They are George Mallory, MD, psychiatrist, posthumously. Brian Nichols, PhD, psychologist. Paco Ratana, LCSW, social worker in minority communities. Malik Yoba, actor. Timothy Benson, MD, psychiatrist in addiction. Judge Sangay Armstead. Belen Fuller, LCSW, social worker in minority communities. Pastor Sung Na of the Korean-speaking community. Kwame Mbalia, author. Yoshado Lang, PhD, psychological programs with Department of Mental Health. And Anthony Portantino, California State Senator. With the onset of the pandemic of COVID-19 in 2020, NAMI Urban Los Angeles was thrust into finding a means of continuing their mission of offering programs, support groups, and advocacy events in a virtual manner. Initially, the speaker presentations were added as they had an accessible virtual format. Then family-to-family classes were presented slowly and cautiously. Eventually, support groups were added with a strictly confidential focus. NAMI Urban Los Angeles has also been fortunate to develop partnerships with the following groups and individuals. Over the years, there have been many persons who've contributed to the leadership of NAMI Urban LA. Past board members during the last 20 years are Courtney Lang, JD, Yvette Townsend, Bellany Brown Keys, Sharon Yates, Philip Fontalea, Rosina Ehrlich, Judy Ann Elder, Jo Helen Graham, Nancy Carter, and Bebe Moore Campbell. Currently, the board of directors consists of the NAMI Urban LA Board of Directors are joined by a host of dedicated staff and volunteers carrying forth the mission of the chapter. We know mental illness can take its toll on the individual living with the illness and also on the family. Our NAMI family has lost several loved ones in these past 2 decades. We remember our founding leader, Bebe Moore Campbell, who lost her battle with aggressive brain cancer in November of 2006, and we remember several of our loved ones who braved life with mental illness. They are Michael Gabriel Curls,
I wish you could tell me what the hell was on your mind.
Clarence Sumner Green III,
When I last talked with you, it seemed like you were doing fine. You and
Stephanie
I love
Ann Shuck,
'cause someone was watching over you until we meet again.
John Stephen Blythe,
Dealing with the ups and downs of this life merry-go-round.
Angela Kathleen Wedgeworth,
Taking things so seriously. I know that you're safe, 'cause
Gary Arden Flood,
watching over you until we meet again. Until we meet again.
Hubert Michael Senegal III,
Till we meet again.
and the passing of Bebe Moore Campbell.
You were sent in, but the love I have for you is
I think we know communities change and we have to be open to that change. I would like to see us just always be open to that. We have to be about trying to help people who are suffering with serious mental illness. And I would like to see us do a better job of connecting with the LGBT communities and others who have a problem getting access to services, that we can work with them and partner and collaborate to make sure that they get the services they need for their communities as well. Because ultimately, all of us have to be well in order to have a well community.
I'm just hoping that one day NAMI, with all of the stigma that's associated with mental health, that will be a household word, like the American Red Cross, like United Way, that it'll be NAMI, NAMI Urban Los Angeles, just NAMI in general would be enough for people to be very accepting of the fact that mental illness is no different than having diabetes. It's just that it affects the brain. And I'm really looking forward to that one day. And I'm going to continue my work, and NAMI's going to continue their work in the community.
So if we could see people in our community overcoming the stigma, I think NAMI would grow. I think instantly NAMI would grow. And I would love to see that. More people in the team going out and letting people know that there is help and resources are available. That's what we need. Just forget about the stigma, forget about the shame. There should be no shame in this. And if there was no shame, we'd see more people participating. That's my belief.
It is now time for the next generation of mental health advocates and influencers to pick up the mantle and carry forth BB's vision and the mission of NAMI Urban LA to an even higher, more innovative level of education, advocacy, support, and public awareness for all people of color.
Ring the bells the field can ring. Forget your perfect offering. There's a crack in everything. That's how the light gets in.